How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual elite profile on D'Angelo Russell, the starting point guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who I believe has had an up and down career, but today is his 25th birthday, and I think that a lot of his accolades and achievements up until now speak for themselves as to why I believe he is an elite player to be watching out for in 2021. And my intention with these is, considering he's 25, with every year as he gets older, I plan to add more to these profiles as time goes on. And D'Angelo Russell is still a very young player, and I think he has a lot more to add to his career. But even with what he's done now, I still believe he's done what it takes to qualify himself as an elite basketball player in this NBA. So if you're unfamiliar with D'Angelo Russell, he stands at about 6'4". He's pretty lean. If you've seen him play, he's very shifty with how he dribbles. He can be a very knockdown shooter at times. And he can be a leader of men on the court. The last two seasons have been kind of up and down because he's been moved around a lot. But I think once he finds his place, once he finds his footing, I think you can most definitely build a playoff team around D'Angelo Russell. I mean, there already has been a playoff team built around him. Now we can see what he's going to do in Minnesota when he and Karl-Anthony Towns are completely healthy, which has been something that hasn't happened, which is something that people haven't seen in Minnesota. But looking forward to the rest of 2021, I do think D'Angelo Russell is a player to keep your eye on if you're a basketball fan. So if you're unfamiliar with him, he's originally out of Louisville, Kentucky, and he would end up going to high school at Montverde Academy in Florida, which of course is where Ben Simmons, R.J. Barrett, a good amount of players went to. And at Montverde, he established himself as a good enough prospect. He was a 5-star that went to Ohio State. And of course, at Ohio State, within the 1 year that he was there, he would go on to be a first team All Big Ten. He would be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He won the Jerry West Award, and he was a consensus first team All-American. And this is the year after being a McDonald's All-American. In 35 games for Ohio State, he went on to average 19.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 5 assists, as well as over 1.5 steals per game, while averaging just about 34 minutes a game. And this season, this would be the season that Ohio State would go on to. They won the first round, but they would end up losing in the round of 32. But of course, Ohio State wasn't necessarily that strong of a team. But D'Angelo Russell had established himself as a good enough prospect to be picked second overall in the 2015 NBA draft. And of course, this is the draft where he was selected behind Karl-Anthony Towns, his current teammate. So this is the fact that they're playing on the same team is actually kind of wild when you think about it. But D'Angelo Russell was picked second in that draft. He was selected by the Los Angeles Lakers. And this is when, of course, Kobe was there. He's one of the few players one of the few current existing players who have played with Kobe Bryant. And in his first season with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2015-16, his age 19 season, he would start 48 games and play 80 games in a season where the Los Angeles Lakers would end up with the worst record in the Western Conference. They finished 17-65. I think that was their worst record or the least amount of wins that they've ever won in their franchise history, which is definitely saying something. But within this rookie season, D'Angelo Russell will go on to average 13.2 points, 3.4 rebounds, 3.3 assists with just over a steal, 1.2 steals per game, in averaging 28 minutes while shooting 41% from the field, 35% from three, and 74% from the free throw line. His rookie year wasn't anything special. He would be named to the all-rookie second team for what he was doing with the Lakers, but of course that Lakers team was kind of a dumpster fire because of course this was towards the end of Kobe Bryant's career where he made so much from his contract that the Lakers really couldn't sign anybody else. So they were playing with a very depleted roster alongside Kobe, but D'Angelo Russell was still able to get his buckets and do what he really needed to, and I think 2016 was Kobe's final year. In 2016-17, in his age 20 season, He would go on to start 60 of the 63 games he would play in a season where the Los Angeles Lakers would finish with the 14th best record in the Western Conference. I mean, they were the second worst. They won 9 more games than the previous season, and of course, this was the season after Kobe left. And I believe they drafted Brandon Ingram this year. But nonetheless, in his second season in LA, D'Angelo Russell would average 15.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and 1.4 steals in playing 28.7 minutes. His field goal percentage went down from 41 to 40.5. His 3-point percentage stayed at about 35%. And his free throw percentage went up from about 74 to 78. And just in his second year in LA, he would play just about as many minutes as the previous year. But following his 2 seasons in LA, he would eventually get traded to the Brooklyn Nets. He was traded in 2017 in exchange for Brook Lopez and the rights to Kyle Kuzma, who they eventually picked in the next upcoming draft. And he would go on to play his next couple seasons in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, D'Angelo Russell would start his career in Brooklyn in his age 21 season in 2017-2018, where he would start 35 of the 48 games he would play in a season where the Brooklyn Nets would go on to finish with the 12th best record in the Eastern Conference. They won 28 games, which is 2 more than D'Angelo Russell won the previous year in LA. They would completely miss the playoffs, but in this season, while averaging about 25 minutes a game, D'Angelo Russell would keep his scoring average at about the same, at about 15.5. His rebounds went up to about 3.9. His assists went up from 4.8 to 5.2. His steals dropped below 1 as it was 0.8. He would shoot 41.4% from the field, a tick higher than his highest field goal percentage at the time. He would go on to shoot 32% from 3, which would be his lowest for a bit. He would go on to shoot 74% from the free throw line, as well as, of course, as he was trying to establish himself at Brooklyn, and he was, of course, dealing with injury troubles. And he would eventually get it all together, and this would transition into his 2018-19 season, which I believe inserts him into the elite conversation. So in his age 22 season in Brooklyn, he would go on to, or in his second season, in his final season in Brooklyn, he would go on to start all 81 games in a season where the Brooklyn Nets would end up with the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference with 42 wins, which is a 14-win difference, 14 more wins than the previous season. And with this, in this season, D'Angelo Russell, he would average 30 minutes a game, which is the most minutes he'd average in a game by about maybe 1 or 2. He would average 21 points, the first time he averaged over 20 in his career. He would keep his rebounds at about the same, keeping it at about 3.9. He would up his assists from 5.2 to 7. He would up his steals per game average from 0.8 to 1.2. And this season, he would go on to shoot 43.4% from the field, the highest he's ever shot in a season in his career. He would shoot 36.9% from 3, which is the second highest he'd ever shoot in his career, except for this current season. And he would shoot 78% from the line, which, of course, was the second highest, which was about the same as his second season in LA. And all of this while leading this team to the playoffs. And the Brooklyn Nets weren't that strong of a team. The fact that D'Angelo Russell was able to do so, he was named to the All-Star game for the very first and only time in his career at this very point. And we're talking about right now in 2021. The only All-Star game that he's made as of now was in 2019. This is the season in which he did it. And after making the playoffs, they would end up losing in the first round to the 76ers 4-1. And I believe this is the year that the Toronto Raptors would end up beating the Warriors. And then this would transition into his next season, which I thought was, he was kind of all over the place. In 2019-2020, he would play 45 total games. He started all 45 of them. He played his first 33 with the Golden State Warriors. In those 33 games, he would average 32 minutes, averaging 23.6 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 6.2 assists, which are just slight dips from the previous year, 0.9 steals which of course was a dip from the previous year. And he would eventually pick up and get moved to Minnesota because he was in the package deal that eventually sent Kevin Durant to Brooklyn. It was just a whole big trade and all this, but nonetheless, By the end of the season, he would play his last 12 games of the 2019-2020 season, which of course was shortened due to COVID. He played the second half in Minnesota, and of course with the Minnesota Timberwolves not making it to the bubble, of course they would finish off the season with a 19-45 record, which of course was still more wins than he had in his first season with the Los Angeles Lakers, to give you a hint of how bad that Lakers team was. But nonetheless, they would go on to finish with the 14th best record in the Western Conference. And in the 12 games he played, he averaged about 21.7 points, 4.6 rebounds, 6.6 assists. So for the entirety of the 2019-20 season, in which he wasn't an all-star, he would start 45 games, which is the least amount of games that he would play in an entire season. But in the season, he would average 23.1 points, which is the most points he'd ever averaged in a season in his career. He averaged 3.9 rebounds, which is roughly the same as he had the previous year. His assist numbers dipped from 7 to 6.3. His steals numbers dipped from 1.2 to 1.1. And for the entirety of the season, he shot 42.6% from the field, which is the second highest he shot from the field at that point. He shot 36.7% from three, which is almost identical to the year that he had previously. And he upped his free throw percentage from 78 to 80.9, which is the highest free throw percentage he'd ever shot in a season for his career, even up until now. And even though it was a short season and he kind of missed the playoffs, it wasn't a lost one. And this is his first I think this will be his first full season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And as of right now, he started 19 of 20 games in a season where the Minnesota Timberwolves are 7-24. They are currently sitting at the very bottom of the West, as they are 5 full games behind the second worst team in the West, which is a tie between the Houston Rockets and the OKC Thunder. They're not doing incredibly well, as Karl-Anthony Towns finally found his way back into the lineup. This season, D'Angelo Russell is averaging 19.3 points, 2.6 rebounds, 5.1 assists, all dips from his previous season. He's averaging 1.1 steals per game, while shooting 42.6% from the field, which is roughly what he did last year. He's shooting 39.9% from three, which is the highest three-point percentage he's ever had in his career. And he's shooting 75% from the free throw line, which is still an incredible number. Currently at the moment, as of February 23rd, D'Angelo Russell is currently missing 4 to 6 weeks because he underwent some arthroscopic knee surgery, and he sat out I guess that game happened the 16th, which was exactly a week ago. And as a total, he and Karl-Anthony Towns have only played 8 of the 31 games that the Timberwolves have played together. So, of course, this record isn't kind of reflective as to how good D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns have been. And, of course, I hope that this man has a speedy recovery. But as of right now, we're looking at a player who is just turning 25, starting to enter about the prime of his career, a player that's kind of been a little bit underestimated, but I think that when he has it all together, he's a very amazing player, and he does a lot to kind of help his team win. I know it's tough to see that if you were to look at the Minnesota Timberwolves right now, but I think looking back at his success, what he was able to do when he was the best player in Brooklyn, and in his short stint in Golden State when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were injured, just the fact that he was able to put up that production despite being on some of the NBA's worst teams, including the Lakers, I think it shows that if you were to put some good players around him, you'd probably see a lot more improvement. You'd start to see a better team around him. But with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to my piece. I hope all is well. And I want to wish a happy 25th birthday to D'Angelo Russell. I truly believe he has an amazing NBA career ahead of him. And with that said, I think he is an elite NBA player, especially for this 2021 calendar year. And I hope he continues to keep it up. And with that said, if you ever get a chance, check out my boy D'Lo. He's currently wearing number 0 with the Minnesota Timberwolves. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 14 minutes of my piece. Once again, today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you with a piece right after this.